So let's consider Saturn. Saturn's a planet that I have a lot of experience with, both myself and with clients. Saturn is very prominently placed on my ascendant and rules some good houses. And I like to spend a good bit of time talking about Saturn because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about Saturn. Now, Saturn is a planet that does represent despondency, pessimism, fear, adversity, poverty. All these things are true about Saturn. When he influences a particular house or area of life, he can bring this kind of suffering. But what's actually happening usually when Saturn isn't working well is that he's probably getting starved through Lajatati Avashtas, through other planets, through his enemies, such as the Sun, Moon, and Mars. And this is an important thing to consider. And if you want to learn more about the Lajatati Avashtas and how they work exactly, you might want to start with the Lajatati Avashtas course that's available on my website as an MP3 download. But I bring this up only because we have to remember that all of the planets have a particular role to play. And Saturn is no different. If we didn't have Saturn, the world would be a mess. There'd be no structure, no organization. There'd be trash everywhere. Our immune systems wouldn't function appropriately. We couldn't endure hardships to make things great. We wouldn't have the capacity to do the tedious work, to go back and edit things and perfect things. So Saturn is very necessary when it comes to having success within the world and doing something of very high quality, which is one of the reasons through Gemini, it's said that when Saturn influences or is the Atmakaraka or influencing the Svamsha, that makes a person a great individual. Most people interpret that to mean that this is going to be someone who's going to be famous or like our TV stars, but that's not what a great individual is. A great individual is someone who does their duty in life, who understands their role within this world and plays it. And if that requires suffering, if that requires sacrifice, if that requires enduring difficulties, the person does it. So that's what makes a person great, is the capacity to see what needs to be done and does it. And does it well, takes time. Saturn is the slowest of all moving planets. And so things that take time, things that take care, these all fall under the rule of Saturn. So I bring this up with the Lajatati Avashtas because if your Saturn is getting starved by Sun, Moon, or Mars, or agitated by Mars, waning moon, or the Sun, well, your Saturn can't do its job. And when it comes to doing hard work, you're not going to feel like doing it, or you're going to complain about it. Most of the time when Saturn is difficult, it's because he's under these negative Lajatati Avashtas. And when you see people who are despondent or depressed or always looking for attention or always need more or never feel like there's enough information, that's usually because Saturn is getting hurt. Because Saturn, he endures things silently. He sees what needs to be done, and he does it. He doesn't complain about it. He doesn't try to make up fantasies about why things should be easier. He just does it. So we have to remember, Saturn strong makes you a strong person. Saturn weak will give someone a tendency to focus more on the bad side of things. Saturn allows us to see that in this world there's good and there is bad. That's just the nature of the world. Saturn isn't interested in escaping from that. As long as we're here, that's something we're going to have to deal with, and to think otherwise is to get caught up in fantasy. And again, Saturn is a planet that deals with truth, reality, which is why he's sometimes considered to be so harsh, because he doesn't care about your fantasies. He wants you to just make peace with reality, do what needs to be done in reality in the present moment now. And if we can do that, we work very well with Saturn. On my website, there's a free download for Saturn, for the Sati Sati, Saturn return, and just understanding how to work with Saturn in general, and I highly recommend it. Go to AshevilleVedicAstrology.com and go to the MP3 download section. I believe it's about a third of the page down. there's a free hour-and-a-half download. So download that and you'll get more information about Saturn, how to work with him. But for now, let's get back to some basics. So again, Saturn is a planet of restriction, sorrow, and limitation, generally how he's interpreted. He can make a person fearful, pessimistic, or despondent. However, he can make a person work very hard. He can make a person careful and cautious, meticulous and practical. So these are people who you want working for you because they'll do a good job and they'll take it seriously. Saturn is, in a sense, an opposite energy of Jupiter. Whereas Jupiter can be buoyant optimism, which we need, Saturn is, let's look at the hard facts, let's look at the reality, which we need as well, because too often we want too much of Jupiter, and when we have too much Jupiter, we get careless. So Saturn helps to keep that balance, helps to keep us in line with faith of Jupiter, but also the practicality, the reality of this world. And again, that the fact that this world isn't always so pleasant, but that's part of life, and that's part of why we're here, is to learn to maintain faith of Jupiter, while also learning to develop detachment and practicality of Saturn. Both of those can go together, and when you get both of those together, you're actually much happier. Saturn is said to be found in the charts of spiritually evolved people. Now, you want to make sure Saturn is in a good situation, because a person can be detached or try to get away from the world, but they're not really understanding what renunciation is about. They're more prone to escapism. So someone who tries to escape life through meditation practices or through spirituality, that's not an evolved spiritual person. That's someone who's just trading one kind of addiction, which could be the addiction to drugs or media, entertainment, for another kind of addiction, which is the escapism of spirituality. To be spiritually evolved, you're at peace with life and the realities of life. Again, this is why Saturn is said to be prominent in spiritually evolved people. Also, Saturn is not dramatic, which means that when Saturn is strong, he's not going to dramatize anything. His suffering he's not going to dramatize. How hard something was, he's not going to dramatize. How spiritually evolved he is, he's not going to dramatize. He's going to appear to be a very normal person, probably. Unless, of course, his karma does direct him to play another role. But we have to remember this. So positively, Saturn gives determination, ambition, patience, and the ability to structure and organize our lives. All things which are extremely important for any kind of success, whether it's spiritual growth, financial success, health. We all need to have this determination, ambition, patience, and structure to allow something to come to fruition. So Saturn gives boundaries. And this is important because, for example, in the Navamsha, that's said to be the chart of our path, our ashram. And the tighter our path is, the quicker we get to the other end, because we're not distracted by all these other things. So always remember that when it comes to marriage, when it comes to work, when it comes to your path, if you want everything, you're not going to get very far because you're going to be distracted. You're going to be bouncing around. But the more you narrow down that path, the more you narrow down your boundaries, the quicker you get from point A to point B. Because when the path is wide, you can go sideways, and that takes away from the forward momentum. So Saturn gives us this capacity to move forward. It gives us boundaries and structure so that we can actually be successful in what we want. And we have to remember that astrologically, that in life, the planets all represent the choices that we make. Meaning that if we want to strengthen Venus, well, that's a choice. If we want to strengthen Saturn, well, that's a choice. We have to decide, what is it that we want to do? What kind of choices do we need to make to get to where we want to be? And then develop those planets. You can't have them all strong, because when they're all strong, as I mentioned in a previous video, they will fight and they'll get in each other's way. So you want to make sure that you are trying to consciously decide, okay, this is the direction I want to go in. What planets can I work with which will allow me to move in that direction most efficiently, most joyfully? And focus on those and realize that you are going to have to sacrifice the other planets. If you want to be spiritually awake, well, you have to learn to meditate. You have to learn to gain control of your consciousness. You have to learn that the people you surround yourself with impact your consciousness. So you're going to narrow down your path. You're going to have less friends. You're going to spend less time with your hobbies and more time in silent meditation. So you're sacrificing all these things for the greater good of this spiritual realization. And we don't just have to talk about it with spiritual realization. It can be with anything, really. That's just the example since we're talking about Saturn. Okay, so Saturn helps us endure in spite of shortcomings. This is important. Most people think that all of their problems are caused by Saturn. No, problems are not caused by Saturn. It is Saturn's inability to endure or to overcome liabilities that causes the problems. And those happen whenever the Sun, Moon, or Mars get in the way of Saturn. So always remember that, especially when you go into a Saturn dasha. What makes a Saturn dasha bad? Sure, maybe Saturn will be in a negative dignity. Maybe in particular Vargas, he'll be debilitated. Well, that's Saturn naturally being bad. But more often than not, it'll be these other planets which are impacting Saturn. So Saturn has a job to do, and he likes to do it. But it's when he gets knocked off course by these other planets, then we start to experience the difficulties that we typically attribute to Saturn. And again, this is covered in the Logitati of Vashta's class, but it's a very important thing to remember. So we want to honor Saturn because we need him. One of the best ways to do that is through feeding the homeless, clothing those who don't have clothes, or giving to people who have less than you do, chanting mantras to Saturn. But overall, really, it boils down to making peace with reality and the peace of situations, and figuring out what do you need to do to be successful, and what kind of sacrifices do you need to make to be successful. And then Saturn works in a more positive role for you, or your Saturn. I don't want to speak as though these planets are external entities, although it's okay to think of them that way in the beginning. They're actually parts of your own consciousness. So just like if you want to learn to play a musical instrument, you need to work on the dexterity in your fingers, make that stronger. Well, if you want to be successful in certain ways, you have to work on strengthening that consciousness within you that's represented by the particular planets. And Saturn is definitely one that we need to work on. Most people don't. So Saturn's associated with fear, reservation, restriction, adversity, delays, loss, misery, melancholia, and depression. And again, it's usually caused because something else is getting in the way. Saturn's the kind of fears that are based on experience, meaning that if you walk down an alley and you get beat up, then next time you walk by a dark alley, that fear comes up because it's something you've experienced. So this is important because Rahu is fears as well, but they are unfounded fears, meaning fears that you don't have any basis for. They're not related to an actual experience, whereas Saturn is often based on fears that come from actual experiences, actual suffering that you've had. So Saturn can represent authority figures, authoritative institutions. It gives leadership abilities, asceticism, perfection, the ability to perfect things. Saturn can be a very materialistic planet, but again, it's mainly in regards to practical endeavors. Saturn gives the capacity to focus, to work hard, to have a sense of duty and responsibility. If you know someone who they get hurt, but they don't make a big deal about it and they just keep doing their job, usually there's Saturn there helping out. If you know someone who's had all kinds of terrible things happen in their life, but they realize that's the way it is and they keep moving forward, it's Saturn there helping out because the person sees it but keeps on moving forward. Saturn can indicate theft, loss, and Saturn does relate to things that take hard work, such as farming, archaeology, mining, anything that takes a lot of hard physical labor, Saturn can have to do with. Now Saturn deals with insecurity, and it can make a person miserly. Badly placed, Saturn can be selfish and indolent, meaning lazy. The person wants you to do everything for them, or they feel that they've got such a bad lot in life, more of a victim mentality. Saturn in bad dignity, probably. Whereas Saturn who can suffer and move forward, Saturn in good dignity, because we all have things that we suffer through in one way or another. Saturn can make a person slim, so give a skinny body, makes a person tall, usually gives a dark complexion. It can also give a very stoic nature. So if you see someone who doesn't really express themselves, they're more reserved, Saturn's probably influential there. So Saturn is exalted in Libra. has its fall in Aries. And the main element of Saturn is air, particularly when in Libra. And Earth is the secondary influence. Okay, some specific things that Saturn represents. Elder siblings, prison or detainment, longevity. Saturn represents our longevity. Again, we need Saturn because that helps us live a long time, helps our body hold it together. Connective tissue, the connective tissue within the body that surrounds the muscles, the ligaments, surrounds the organs. All these things are ruled by Saturn. So if you know someone who has connective tissue problems, it's probably an issue with Saturn. Or ligament problems, weak ligaments. Saturn deals with the immune system, our pets, servants, represents hard work. It shows debts, loss, illness, our duty. And remember that about Saturn and duty. Wherever Saturn is placed within the chart, whatever house that is, that'll show where does our duty lie. Where are we meant to put our attention? Where are we meant to serve? It shows our weaknesses, innate weaknesses, focus and perseverance. Now, Saturn can also make a person very conventional and orthodox. It can make a person slow and delayed in their response, meaning that they might not respond as immediately as someone who maybe has Mercury in a certain position. Mercury will be very quick-witted, whereas Saturn will take some time to process some things. Saturn represents dark colors such as blue and black. It can make a person impotent. It can give jobs in bricklaying, building, masonry, mining, or any other kind of occupation dealing with rock and stone, or even leather, old and dead things, taxidermy. Saturn rules toilets, sinks, soiled clothing, the western direction, outcasts and vagrants, and again, old or dead things. So all these things are represented by Saturn. And one of the most important Vargas for Saturn, while we're talking about it, is the Dasumpsha, because that shows what is our capacity to be great, to do great things. And again, this is not in regards to status. That's more the sun. This is more what is our capacity to do the hard work, the tedious things, to be a great person, which doesn't have anything to do with status. It just means, do you have the capacity to do what you're meant to do? And that's Saturn in the Varga, the D10. Okay, so let's consider Saturn in some houses. All right, Saturn in the first house can make a person stoic. It can make a person seem off-putting. When someone has Saturn on the ascendant, the first thing you think is that they just have this sort of repulsive energy. You might not like them. They might seem aloof or authoritative or detached. But again, you might need to get to know them a little bit better, because there might be other things going on in their chart which could make up for that. But that's what you initially see, because the first house, whatever planets are in the first house, that's what you initially see from someone. Saturn shows our body's ability to endure hardship, and our personality's ability to endure hardship. In the second, it shows our thriftiness, the wealth that comes from hard work, dealing with rock quarries, or again, leather, or old and dead things. In the third, Saturn can represent servants, the state of our servants, how we relate to our servants. The fourth house, Saturn deals primarily with pets. So, Saturn's in the fourth house, ruling the fourth house, aspect in the fourth house, he's in good shape, he helps your pets. Otherwise, he makes you have problems with your pets, and you might know people who do that. Who they always seem to be taking their pets to the doctor, or something always seems to be happening with their pets. Check Saturn. In the fifth house, Saturn can show a fall from position, whether that's career. It can also show a inability to see positive ways to make changes, because the fifth house shows our capacity to use what's within our life to do good things and to make changes. And if Saturn's difficult, then there will be too much focus on the difficulties and the obstacles, the liabilities and the problems. Saturn's in a good position. That can show someone who has the ability to really say, I know this is messed up and I know this is going to be difficult, but I can do it. I can move forward. I can endure these hardships and get to the end. I can grind my teeth and make it happen. So Saturn can be helpful in the 5th if he's in really good dignity and helped out by some of his friends, such as Mercury and Venus. Saturn in the 6th. That shows our capacity to overcome deaths and diseases. Saturn can be very good in the 6th because that gives us strong immune system, strong ability to overcome our enemies, strong ability to pay off those karmas that we need to be successful in life, to move forward, to take the next step. In the 7th, Saturn shows appreciation for relationships, meaning that someone with Saturn in the 7th, it can make a person get married later on in life or get married to someone who's older than them. But when it does work, the person deeply appreciates that relationship. That within the world, there's a lot of difficulty and there's a lot of suffering. And to actually find someone that loves you and will love you back and that you can build something strong with is a gift, even if it's not perfect. See, Saturn, he's not looking for perfection that's unreachable. He wants to see the world as it is. But he also allows us to see that these simple things can give us perfection. So again, it's kind of an interesting combination. He wants you to stay in reality. He also wants you to do hard work to perfect things, but in a more healthy-minded way. So it's not based on fantasy always. Saturn in the 7th can give a lack of empathy, so distance from relationships. That's if Saturn's in bad dignity or under bad influences. 8th house, Saturn shows chronic diseases, death, our flaws, our weaknesses, our liabilities. Good Saturn, are we able to grow from that? Bad Saturn, does it just tear us down more and more and more? 9th house, Saturn will show the delays to our fortune, to our creativity, to our sense of purpose in life. The 9th house is a wonderful house. It just gives freely. When Saturn's there, it delays that. So sometimes when Saturn's in the 9th, even if he's in good dignity, a person might not feel fortunate until they have more maturity, more wisdom. If Saturn's in bad dignity, that can show a lot of difficulties throughout the duration of a person's life. Again, delays to fortune and delays to creativity. And if any of you are interested where I'm getting this information from, it just occurred to me, this is going to be in the next book that's coming out, The Art and Science of Vedic Astrology, Volume 2, but it's also in the syllabus to the step-by-step class, the MP3 download class, which we did this past fall, which should be available in the next week or two at Asheville, VedicAstrology.com. But there's a 46-page handout that goes with the course and has these listings of houses and planets and what they can indicate and mean within these houses. So that's where this is coming from. So you can either wait for the book if you want to have something in writing, or you can get the course and you'll just have it sent to you with the recordings. But anyway, in the 10th, Saturn represents our duty. Do we have the capacity to be strong, to endure the difficulties, to do what we are called to do, to survive, to be successful, or do we not? Check Saturn in relation to the 10th, ruling the 10th, in the 10th. Good dignity Saturn, Saturn in good Lajatati Avashtas, that'll happen. Other way around, more focus on the problems than the actual solutions. And of course you want to check Saturn in the D10, the primary Varga for Saturn, for the ability to be successful in our life and our activities. The 11th house, Saturn represents elder siblings and livestock. So whereas the 4th can represent pets, now we look to the 11th for livestock or wealth through animals and elder siblings. The 12th, Saturn shows our personal expenses, how we spend our money or where it goes or whether it's spent on good things or not. Remember, the 12th isn't always bad. If we have planets in good dignity in the 12th, then we spend on good things, things that are helpful. If we have planets in bad dignity in the 12th, then whatever those planets represent, we're not spending wisely, so we're wasting our money. So the 12th is expenses, but we can have good expenses. Just like we can have bad expenses. We do need to spend. That's part of life, is having things flow through. Saturn in the 12th deals with loss, capital expenses. It shows prisons and imprisonment. Bad dignity Saturn influencing the 12th. Maybe there's a person being imprisoned or being restrained or detained in some way, or have a propensity towards that. But anyway, these are all things that you could do to keep in mind when you're considering Saturn and what he's all about and how he works within a person's chart. And as always, remember, Saturn is necessary. I honor Saturn a lot. I've done many practices to Saturn over long periods of time, 30-week practices, even longer, because I understand the value of Saturn, and I know what he can do within us when he's not working well. So it's good to strengthen Saturn. So again, go back, find, download that Sadie Sati Saturn Return hour and a half long course from my website. Listen to that, and it'll give you more understanding of Saturn, how he works, particularly in regards to the Sadie Sati and the Saturn Return period. After this, we'll move on to the nodes of the moon, Rahu and Ketu.